But what I want to draw upon over here is the equation between buyers and sellers, or demand and supply. And at every point in time, this equation keeps changing. And because it keeps changing, price moves. And price moves only when demand, price moves up only when demand is greater than supply. Price moves lower when supply is greater than demand. So once we understand this market as a basic math between buyers and sellers, between demand and supply, what we have to understand is how do we track this demand and supply line. And all my years, okay, I have been trading. I have been able to do that, okay, only by what I call an order flow chart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adopt a middle of the road approach. Not there is somebody buying and there's somebody selling. Now, if you just strip yourself up from all those things, okay, which you've been told that there is a technical indicator and this indicator is important and this is going to predict the future, and if this goes to this level, the market bounces and this and that. You know, that indicator itself, okay, was based, okay, on demand and supply. And that it says over there, right? It's oversold. What does it mean? Okay, that there was a lot more, okay, supply coming in, or overbought. What does it mean? Okay, that means, okay, there was too much demand over there, right? So everything is still based on demand and supply. What we are asking you to do is take the focus away from understanding the market in terms of indicators and start looking at it in terms of demand and supply. And once, okay, you get to that kind of an equation where you're looking at the market in terms of where demand is higher, where supply is higher, okay, you will be at a much more better position to understand how it is going, right? So just to quickly sum up, okay, where we are right now. But okay, we'll overcome all of that, and we'll talk to you today about the need of a proper working process, about how, okay, with a proper process in place, you can, okay, negotiate the challenges which are given, okay, by markets. So today, okay, like I said, okay, was a relatively easy session, at least for all of us in the VMR. Okay, the bias was super clear, the way of working was super clear, the market was bullish, and it's always, okay, an easier market to trade when there is somebody buying and there's somebody selling. Now, if you just strip yourself up from all those things, okay, which you've been told that there is a technical indicator and this indicator is important and this is going to predict the future, and if this goes to this level, the market bounces and this and that. You know, that indicator itself, okay, was based, okay, on demand and supply. And that it says over there, right? It's oversold. What does it mean? Okay, that there was a lot more, okay, supply coming in, or overbought. What does it mean? Okay, that means, okay, there was too much demand over there, right? So everything is still based on demand and supply. What we are asking you to do is take the focus away from understanding the market in terms of indicators and start looking at it in terms of demand and supply. And once, okay, you get to that kind of an equation where you're looking at the market in terms of where demand is higher, where supply is higher, okay, you will be at a much more better position to understand how it is, right? So just to quickly sum up, okay, where we are right now.
Good evening, guys. Good evening, everyone. A quick sound check. I hope I'm audible. Great. Welcome to this 5 p.m. session on Monday. And we've had a great victory in England and drawn the series. So the Josh is high. And we have also started a new series in the derivatives in Nifty and Bank Nifty. So let's start with our monthly review, and then we'll move on to the weekly, and then we will come down to what we have done Friday and today in the futures part. So on screen right now is the monthly Nifty spot chart. So we have always maintained how we have the top to bottom approach. So we do the monthly, then the weekly, then the daily, and then we cut it down to how the volumes are coming in using the order flow. So what do we do on the monthly chart? How do we find out the references? What is that we need to figure out? Because the setup is the same. The market profile setup, the structure on all time frames gives you the same cues. So what did we do in June? In June, we formed a neutral extreme profile to the upside. So when we did our review of June, we knew that this failed auction and this move higher was a neutral extreme move. So what was this telling us? Just a second, guys. So are you able to see my markings? The yellow lines which I am drawing? Okay. Okay, give me a minute, guys. Okay, sorry. I think is this yellow line circle which I marked as seen now? And I think there is some issue with the marker. Anyways, I will. I'll just do with the cursor for today. I think I'll have to just check out what the issue is. Okay. Apologies, guys. I think there's some issue with that marker. I'll anyways use the mouse for today. We'll work on what is the issue. So what we did at the lows, where my mouse is in the June month of June, we left a failed auction at 24473, and then we went on to leave an extension handle at 25317 and closed around the highs. We made a neutral extreme profile to the upside, wherein we hit new highs for the year 2025 25669 on the last day of the month. So that is how a neutral extreme structure closes. It closes at the highs. And same thing we saw on Friday. We got a neutral extreme structure on the downside in both Nifty and Bank Nifty futures, and both of them closed at the lows. So there's another thing to a neutral extreme structure. It rarely gives a follow through. So that is what we were expecting when we closed June as an elongated and a neutral extreme profile. We were looking for a balance to get back into the auction. And that is what we did. And you can see the monthly profile, how we have formed a nice balance initially. Then we made a move away to the downside. And this came after we did not make any follow through to the neutral extreme high. In fact, the highs of the month was right where our rollover point was for July, which was at 25610. We made a high of 25608 in July in spot. So you can see how that rollover was already telling us that upside is being capped. And that is the reason we made a move lower through the month and left a double distribution profile to the downside. And we had some important references marked, which was the POC of 25109 and the VWAP of 25008, which was broken in the process. And it was not just broken. Once it was broken, it showed us change of polarity. It was telling us seller were taking control over that level, which was supposed to be defended by the buyers. So how do we identify all this and how do we take it forward? So we make it simpler and we come out with this reports. So the first report I want to show up is the monthly report, where we do the analysis of what has happened through the previous month. So we do this once the calendar month is over because we do this on spot. So there's a difference when you are doing higher time frame analysis on futures and spot, because spot follows the calendar month. Okay, so it will be the from 1st to 30th or 31st, and the calendar week will be Monday to Friday. But in derivatives, it will not be the same. In derivatives, the settlement cycle starts on a Friday when it comes to Nifty futures, and every Thursday there is a weekly settlement which is done. So it is important to note that when you are following the weekly time frame, in spot it will be Monday to Friday, in derivatives it will be Friday to Thursday. And it is very important to have those cycles marked and see those references. We have provisions in the Wheatrender charts of watching the weekly series, uh, in spot as well as in futures. I'll show that in a bit, and of how we can see that and how it is very important also. So coming back to the report, the monthly report which we have published, what do? We give the closing price, we give the high and the low, and we tell structure wise what kind of a profile it was. It was a double distribution profile, and we have a screenshot about what it did on the daily time frame. So you can see we have this brief of last month. The last month monthly profile was a neutral extreme to the upside with overlapping to higher value, with a failed auction at lows 24473 and a buying extension handle at 25317. So from it where it went to make new highs for the year at 25669, which I just showed up on the monthly chart. So this month's neutral extreme VWAP of 25008 was supposed to be a swing reference, whereas on the upside Nifty will have to sustain above the rollover point of 25610 for a probe towards the 180R objective of 25879. So what did we do on the daily time frame? We started the week with a balance. Not in fact the week, the first 7 days were in a range, as you can see in the daily charts. And the 2nd of July, we got a initiative selling tail. That is what we give lot of importance to, A period singles, whether it is on buy side or sell side. They tell you that initiative players have entered the market. So when you are getting initiative players entering the Nifty spot right at the rollover point, monthly reference, you know that the PLR for the month would be on the downside. Even if it was not trending lower, this A period single gives you opportunity to sell 25,600 call and higher options. Call options about 25,600 can be sold because you have seen initiative selling at that level. Although the down move came later, we were still looking at 25317 as support because that was a buy side extension handle which broke on 11th of July. You can see how we started the move away from 10th of July, which was a move away from this 7-day balance. And then we again continued this imbalance with a gap down on 11th. So when that extension handle, a buy side extension handle of 25317 got negated, it in turn left a sell side extension handle at 25331. So this was showing us change of polarity at a buy side reference. It was showing us a level which was dominated by the buyer last month is now being taken over by the seller. So that became our supply point. It became a resistance. Support breaking of support becomes a resistance. So that this was a classical example of the higher time frame, where we already mentioned this 25317. When this was broken with a sell side extension handle, you know that now with that as your stop loss. At the first week of July, 25600 was the option which calls above which we can sell. And once you got an extension handle at 25331, any calls about 25300 400 were the ones you can look to go short in. So that is how you make note of these higher time frame references and see how the auction is leaving important cues at those levels. So what did it do after it broke 25317? It went on to promptly test the POC and the VWAP of June, which was at 25109 and 25008. But what did it do the first time? As expected, we got a small buying tail. That means some demand was coming in and even shorts were booking out on the 14th of July when we first tested the 25008. So from there we gave a bounce, but the bounce, what did the bounce do? It stalled at 24255, 25255 in the on the 16th of July. Next week again we went on to make new lows, but then on the new lows we again on 21st we got a buy side uh, initiative tail. So this again gave us a bounce, and that bounce also stalled at 25246. So these two pullback highs and daily swing highs which we got on 16th and 24th were telling us that this supply zone from 25331 to 25260 was now completely held by the sellers. So on 24th of July, when we started this fresh imbalance to the downside with this double distribution trend day, which continued the next session, we knew now that the auction is moving lower. And that is what it did. It went on to make new lows of 24598 on 29th. And 24598 was an important reference. We have checked that on the weekly report of last week, where we had marked it as a buying tail. So we took support there, and from there again we gave a bounce back to 24956 on 31st. So what have we done on the monthly time frame in Nifty spot? It was a double distribution trend one to the downside, overlapping to higher value, which has the DD single zone 25255 to 25331, which will be the upper supply zone for the coming month. And the series VWAP, which was a 25142, because it's a double distribution trend one down, it tells us that the seller was dominant. So hence this VWAP, the series VWAP of 25142 will be important. And then we have the arrow point, the rollover point for the August series, which is at 24860. So these are the upside references which we have marked out in the report, and which we'll have to make a note. And immediate reference for the August month of August was this pullback high of 31st of July, which is at 24796. So these were the references, and we have given up the monthly zones in this column, where you have all the important references for the month. We have basically three important references which we carry forward whenever a new series starts, whenever a new month starts, which is a rollover point 24860 and VWAP and POC of the previous month. So the plan is simple. Above these references, we are bullish. Below these references, we are bearish. So for now, when we started the month of August, we were below all of them. And you can see how the 1st of August, we made a probe higher. We made a range extension to the upside, which got rejected. And we ended up in a neutral extreme profile to the downside. And today was just a continuation of what we did on Friday, in the sense we remained in Friday's range and continued forming value. So we'll continue to use these three references on the higher time frame as our basis for being bullish or bearish on the monthly time frame. So same thing with spot, Bank Nifty spot. What we did on the monthly time frame was we were forming a nice balance and a Gaussian curve for most part of the month. We even discussed that in these sessions of how we were doing the 80% rule in the monthly value on an intraday basis, because we are forming a nice Gaussian curve. So what we did, it was in balance for a longer time than Nifty. So you can see how the daily chart again gives a very important cue in Bank Nifty right at the start of the month. What did we get on 2nd of July? We made new all-time highs. But what did the new all-time highs do? It left a big initiative selling tail. So what are initiative selling tails and why do we give them so much of importance, especially those which come at new highs? So what we saw on 2nd of July was telling us that longs are liquidating. There is no more demand at the new all-time highs and we are liquidating. So you can see how this A period tail of 2nd of July held the upside on all the days the market made an attempt to get into. You can see multiple attempts being made. 10th of July has got an A period selling tail as soon as it entered this A period selling tail on of 2nd. Then again we have one on 17th. Then again we have one on 22nd and 24th. So we have 5 attempts in the initial balance where the Bank Nifty spot tried to get into the 2nd of July selling tail. But all 5 days we left fresh initiative selling tails. So that is clearly telling that initiative selling is being supported again by aggressive selling. So this became our reference and our rollover point for the July series also was around the same level 57260. So when we were not able to close above that on a daily basis, we knew that the upside is capped. So although the Bank Nifty was more in a balance with the downside taking support at that POC of 56,600 for most part of the month, you can see how the lows on 4th, 11th and 14th were right at that 56,600 level. And the first time we broke below on 18th, we tested that VWAP, series VWAP, which was at 56,200. From there, we gave a bounce. We did this 80% rule on the upside in the developing monthly value. And then we left these two initiative selling tails. So when you're getting initiative selling tails, you know that the direction is stalled and we need to look in the opposite way. So that is what happened on the 25th. We got another initiative selling tail which took us away from this monthly value. And this time there was no reversal. We got another neutral extreme profile on the 28th with this failed auction, which was the first day of the week uh, last week, Monday of last week, when we get a failed auction with a seaside, and this failed auction came right at where the monthly POC was of June, 56600. 56578 was the failed auction in spot last week. So as I was mentioning earlier, these monthly references will give us important cues all through the month about when you need to change your bias and when a new reference you need to take get into consideration. So when you left this failed auction on last Monday on this 56578, you knew now that that 56600, which was with the buyers for the month of June and most of the month of July, is now given up to the sellers. So 56600 call was the strike which you could have sold in higher call options once we got this FA last week. And from there we went on to make new lows. This FA of 28th was negated by another FA on the 31st on Thursday. We got an FA at 55547 which told us now that the downside is getting capped and the seller has failed at those new lows. So that gave a very quick bounce back to this POC of the neutral extreme of Monday. But that was it. That was a bounce. That was just a bounce because the seller had failed. It was not because some initiative buying had come in. So that is the difference. You need to figure out structure wise on all time frames which of the buyer or the seller is active and what you need to shape your bias on. So the monthly profile you can see is a nice Gaussian curve, but what it has done is into the close last few days, it has moved away to the downside. So it has moved away from this nice monthly value and it has dropped by over almost 1,000 points from this value area low of 56560. Remember, we made a low of 55547 and left a failed auction there, which stopped the downside. So what we have as reference for the month of what we had in fact was this 55843, which was this buying tail on the monthly profile, but this was broken on the very first day of the month, so it no longer holds an important reference. And on the upside we will need to get about this 56170 for probing higher in spot. Excuse me. So say similar to the Nifty monthly levels, Bank Nifty monthly zones have been marked. The rollover point is at 56170 for the August series. So that will be one important marker for us both in spot as well as in futures. And the VWAP is at 56751, but the VWAP on the monthly time frame will not be very important. This POC will be important, but the VWAP will not be. Why? Because what we have seen on the monthly time frame is a nice balanced value. So balanced value means the value VWAP is in support by both buyers and sellers. There is no one dominant party. Whereas in Nifty, we have a double distribution trend down profile. So that VWAP will have to be defended by the sellers. In Bank Nifty, it was a nice balance. So if you get into this value area zone, there is a very good chance that we'll directly go on to hit this POC 57013, and then we will make an attempt to tag the value area high. And we have seen this happening even during the month of July when this value was well pronounced. So this is what it is on the spot charts, and we have all this covered. And why do we do this? So that you just have a idea about what is happening on the higher time frame. And all of these posts are available in the forum section, and we then cut it down to the weekly chart. So monthly, we know what are the three important references in both Nifty as well as Bank Nifty. Then we cut it down to the weekly chart and we see what Nifty has done on the weekly time frame. So what have we done on the weekly time frame? Last week, Nifty had made a hat trick of neutral extreme weekly profiles. So we had already emphasized in last Monday session how in the month of July, the buyers have repeatedly failed. They've made a range extension every week, but they have failed to sustain, and the sellers have taken advantage of it and driven it lower through the week. So all the weeks in July, we have formed neutral extreme profiles to the downside. So this repeated failure by the buyers itself was giving us the cue in the lower time frame that the PLR, the path of least resistance, is to the downside. So last week as well, what did we do? We opened the week with a neutral centered day, but we were way below previous week's value and POC. So we did make an attempt after opening lower on Tuesday to probe higher. We had this extension handle probed higher, made these uh, new highs on Wednesday and Thursday. But the highs which we made on Thursday with the double distribution profile was met with poor highs, similar highs. So similar highs give you two indications. Either the market is getting exhausted in that direction, or it is taking time, taking a pause, and it will then go on to repair. But the TPOs of I and J are not TPOs which give you confidence that they will continue to head higher. The same thing, if we had it in a K or an L, we could expect the auction to continue higher. But because the close was way below these highs, we knew that this was more month end move or option related, the inventory related, settlement related move, and it was not because of any initiative buying which was coming. So it was very clearly proved right on Friday, because we made a typical seaside which left a failed auction right below this halfback. 24796 is the halfback of 31st July. And why do we take that as an important reference? Because this profile was an elongated profile. It was an outside bar, and it made new highs for the week and almost tested the lows of the week. So when you have such an elongated profile, you cannot, and it was a trend up profile, so you don't have value. So that is where you take the references of the halfback and important extension handles or the POC. So hence this 24796 was the reference on the upside. So when we opened in range on Friday and made an attempt to probe higher, when we stalled here with a seaside, and when we got back into the initial balance, it was clear enough that this halfback was holding. And now we are looking for a move lower to uh, search for buyers. And we left an extension handle at 24598 and made a low of 24535, which in fact was a very important reference. So we had a neutral extreme profile on the daily to start the week. then we had a double distribution up profile, then we had a neutral center, and 31st was actually a trend day, but it could not be considered as a closed trend day at close because it had given up all its gains. So it was just an outside bar. That is the reason we have them marked in blue. So green is for bullish, red is for bearish, blue is for neutral. So after this outside bar, if we are breaking one end of the outside bar, it definitely tells you that the auction wants to move in that direction. And that is what we did. We went on to make new lows for the week. And what we did on the weekly time frame is left a failed auction at the highs of 24956, and we have formed completely lower value with the FA at 24956, and we not only stayed below the earlier support, you can see this extended VPOC of 24790. We not only broke below that, but we also broke the support of 24593, which was a buying tail with an extension handle at 24598. So just like on the monthly time frame, we saw that 25317 buy side extension handle being negated by a sell side one at 25331. Similar thing happened in Nifty spot on Friday, where we got a sell side extension handle at 24598. So that was our reference on the upside for today, and that was also our first bullish hypo. So we wanted the Nifty to remain below this for a test of these lower levels. So I'll come to what has happened today. We'll open up today's chart and we'll see. Just before that, I'll want to continue the Bank Nifty weekly spot, and then we'll open up both Nifty and Bank Nifty spot of today's as well as the futures chart. So these were the hypos for today. You can see we were bearish only below this 24533. So this never came, and hence when this did not get triggered, the only thing left in the auction was to probe higher to look for sellers. That is the reason we took off this. We took off this 649. We also took off 24692, and we were very close to this 24740. So we'll come to that in a bit. And before that, we'll just wrap up with what Bank Nifty did last week. So why we do this analysis? Because start of the week, start of the month gives us very important cues. So as I was showing you on the monthly chart, you can see how on 28th of July, which was last Monday, Bank Nifty left this failed auction at just below that monthly POC of 56,600. So this was telling us that this upside is capped, and this is the fresh level which the sellers have taken over. So from there, you can look for more downside, which we did get. And this seaside on Thursday stalled that move temporarily. So we went on to get higher, tag this VPOC. So the in spot, because we are looking at spot chart, POCs, unvisited POCs become important objectives when you are getting a fresh move in that direction. And this is valid on time frames. So we saw in Nifty spot, weekly spot, how this 2479,011 objective on the downside. So this was hit. And similarly in Bank Nifty, once we got a sign that the downside is done, immediate objective would have been this POC first, 56,200, and then this higher VPOC of 56,385, which is where we stalled and which is where we stopped. So on the weekly time frame, we have formed a nice balance, but it is a normal variation profile to the downside with completely lower value. And what we have done is we have closed below the value. And even in Bank Nifty spot, you can see last week itself, we were expecting a tag of this weekly VPOC of 55682. And below that, we are looking at this 55376. So what are these? The weekly VPOC, which was not visited from June, was the first level, and the next level was this buying tail which we have. So as long as uh, the PLR is to the downside, we will keep marking our references as per the lower weekly support as per what market profile shows us. So these were the hypos for today, and again you see the rollover point becomes an important reference on the upside in spot as well as in futures. So let's now make a quick look of what we have done today in spot, and then we'll move on to the future section. So I'll start with the weekly spot chart of Nifty, and you can see what we did today was we did not stay below this 24535 So that is the reason we have negated this sell side extension handle, which I had mentioned in the weekly report. And we have gone on to test this weekly POC 24680. And not only that, you can see very well how once this was taken out, it has become support. You can see the lows of the L holding just above the weekly POC. So this is how the structure gives you cues, and you need to know what the latest information the market profile is giving you. So when we could not break below the previous lows, you knew that the neutral extreme once again is not giving a follow up. And then once we negated this extension handle, you knew now there is no supply coming in. The seller who had caused this extension handle on Friday are no longer there. So we got back into the weekly value. So this POC was our objective. It was stalling there in the EF, but once it took out in the G, we went on to make these new highs. We did get a dip in the ITPO, the afternoon inventory adjustment, which we call, but that left a pullback low. And you can see immediately we got back above this POC, and you can see how the lows of J are right where the weekly POC is. And then the pullback low in L, which will be our immediate reference, is also just there. But only thing is the POC of today has shifted to the top. So we will have to wait and watch how the auction holds this POC, and accordingly look to take action tomorrow. So this is the weekly chart. I'll cut it down to the spot daily chart, and that will give us little more finer cues. So these have got the hypos which we mark in the report. So you can see this was the first bearish hypo for today, which never got triggered. But on the upside, we got about this 24598. We tagged this POC, then we hit this pullback high, and then finally we stalled just below this DTPO halfback from first. So this will be our immediate reference on the upside. If we are able to take this out, we can continue higher to this halfback. 24796 is also a very important higher time frame reference, not just for this month but for the entire remaining year of 2025. Because if you open up the yearly spot chart, which we keep doing at the end of every month, you will see that the POC of the year 2025 is now shifted to 24791. So that will be one very important reference, and we call it the Lakshman Rekha in the room now. So we will be very alert about what the auction does at that 24791 reference. And of course, yes, we have the rollover point. So there is no case of being bullish as long as we are below this rollover point. Yes, we can play for a bounce. We can look for small intraday bounces, but as long as we don't get buy side volumes above this 24860, we cannot get bullish for the month of August. Agreed that we have a festive month ahead. We have the Ganesh Chaturthi later in the month, which is undoubtedly a bullish event. But then we still have time for that. Until that, we may get some new nuances in the market profile, which will tell us that yes, the initiative buyers are now coming in. But for now, we need to see buy side volumes above this rollover point for us to see any bullish move coming in month of August. So again, on the downside, we already have marked these references. So we will have to break these references. If not, we can look for a balance to form in the initial few days, and then we can see a move away. That is what happened in July. We started July with a balance, and then we got a move away on the downside. So that is how we will have to break it out from monthly, weekly, and then to daily, and see what it is doing on the daily time frame and compare it with the higher time frame references. So this is as far as the Nifty spot is concerned. Let us now have a quick look at what we have done in Bank Nifty spot weekly chart before we move on to the daily report which we have on futures, and how to read the charts, and also how to get the weekly references on derivatives. So I'm opening the Bank Nifty weekly spot chart. We'll do the weekly spot, and then we'll switch to the daily, and finally to the daily report. So you can see this is today's chart. today's profile, and you can see how neatly we are been below previous week's value and formed a nice Gaussian curve for the day. We have a small tail at the lows, a small tail, identical tail at the highs. So this is a typical 313 profile. A nice balance in between with similar tails at both ends and a very prominent POC right in the middle. So this kind of a profile on a daily time frame is telling you that this auction is ready to get into an imbalance mode soon. So how will it happen? We will have to wait for an initiative buying tail or an initiative selling tail which negates one of these high or the lows of the day, and it continues to probe in that direction. So the weekly time frame, we are well below the previous week, but what we have done is we have not stayed below this previous week low, which was a failed auction. We have in fact closed above that failed auction. So failed auction is a very clean level. Above it we are bullish, below it we are bearish. So if we had closed below this failed auction, we would have been bearish for a test of this swing low of 55149. But the fact that we have closed right in the middle, it is telling us it's an even close. None of the buyer or the seller is in advantage for this week as of now. So once one of these tail is taken out and sustained, that is where we can look for a probe in that direction. And because the last week's profile is a nice balance, once you get into this weekly value of 55890, there is a very good chance that you do the 80% in this weekly value. So this is one very nice setup which is there in Bank Nifty spot, which can come into play later this week. On the downside, we are looking for a test of 55355, which once again is a very important level in Bank Nifty spot, not only because it was the overlapping monthly POC for April and May, I think, and then it is also the POC of the year 2025. So 2025 has been a very bullish month for Bank Nifty. We have, I think, climbed up almost 8,000, 9,000 points. So 52,000 was a level from where we have left an extension handle on the yearly time frame. So from 52,000, we have come up to 57,600. So now we are kind of consolidating and we are very close to that POC of 55355. So that will be one important level to watch in spot, and what it does not just on the intraday time frame but more so on the end of day and the end of week basis, because that is a swing level and a higher time frame level. So it is not to be judged by what happens on the 3-minute or the 5-minute or the 30-minute chart. So all these higher time frame references, we will give it more leverage, more leeway, and we will see how the auction is reacting to it on a closing basis and also on the weekly closing basis. So shifting to the daily chart of Bank Nifty, you can see how we had a neutral extreme on Friday, but we took support just above this FA. But today we broke, we made an attempt to probe higher in the A period. We opened in range, but we took support right at the failed auction point. We probed higher, but the probe higher got rejected in the entry into this value, and we stalled right at this KTPO halfback. So from there, this capped the upside. It came back lower, broke the lows of the morning and made new lows. But then again, there was no range extension after the initial balance. So that is the reason we have formed a nice Gaussian curve 313 profile in Bank Nifty spot, and it looks good for a imbalance in the coming session. If this is going to the upside, then you're looking for a tag of this VPOC and also a test of this selling tail of 56077, and then we have the all important rollover point of 56170. So these are the references for spot in Bank Nifty. Let us now move on to the daily report of futures. So this is what we did in Nifty futures. This is a new series which is started, and this was the first day of the new series. So the settlement gets over on Thursday. So from Friday we consider the Nifty futures to start a fresh settlement. So hence in Nifty futures, what we do is we take the week also from a Friday to a Thursday. So what did we do on Friday? You can see it was a neutral extreme profile lower where we left an extension handle and we closed at the lows. But one very important development which we all observed on Friday in the room was the POC shifted to the lows 24618. So we already keep saying neutral extreme rarely gives a follow up. And then when you have this POC shifting lower, it is only telling you that the initiative player who had caused the move on that day is now taking home the profits. So there was no reason to hold on to any short positions because of this POC as well as the neutral extreme structure. So we have in the daily report, we have the open type, which talk about the volumes of the open type, which was above average on Friday. We give the initial balance range. You can see how we made an attempt to probe higher, but then it got rejected. We again went on to break lower and closed below the IBL. Volumes were above average even in the initial balance, and the day type was a neutral extreme profile. And we clocked above average volumes on the daily also. We give a small brief of what happens, and then we have these very important daily zones. Just like how we saw the monthly zone in the monthly report, we have these daily zones where we mark the POC and the VWAP. We have the value area, and we also mark the HVN. This 24959 HVN is for the August series. So we need to be very careful that it is not anymore connected to July. July is done and dusted. We are done with the July derivatives volumes. So what we have to look for is the volumes which have come in August. So this reference on the upside is the August one. Similarly, the weekly zone. So we have a link here where you can open up the weekly chart, and I'll just quickly open this up, and you can see how this weekly chart will be little different from the calendar week. You see the calendar week in spot was from 24th July to calendar week in spot was from 28th July to 1st of August, but the calendar week in Nifty futures will be from 25th July to 31st August, because 31st August was the settlement. So we need to close this week this day. So you can see how we have formed a nice balanced profile, but we have closed around the value area low, and this was a normal variation profile to the downside on the weekly time frame with the initiative selling tail. So when you have a initiative seller, the POC and the VWAP of that structure becomes important. So as long as we were below this VWAP, we were looking at more downside, and that is what we have done this week. We started off with a neutral extreme profile, and you can see how today we have formed an inside bar which has stayed above the POC of Friday, but then it has negated the neutral extreme VWAP, which had to get in supply today for us to uh, see that the sellers were still holding this zone. But because there was no supply which came in today, and this level was taken out on a closing basis, this is no longer a reference now. So this POC remains an unvisited one, so important objective. And if we get some fresh sell side signal in the coming sessions, this will be our first objective. Whereas today we have closed around the highs, so today's VWAP would be an support. Where and on the upside, we will have to look for getting some. I'll open up the daily chart and we will be able to figure out. So it is very important to make a note of this weekly series, which we cover in the daily report also. Whenever the weekly series gets over, we have a small brief and we write down the value which we are looking forward for the next week. So same thing, the monthly zone which we saw in the monthly report, a shorter version of the same is carried forward. The immediate monthly references are there apart from the last 2 months. And we have the business areas which are marked for today. So let's just open up today's Nifty futures chart and see what we have done in the futures. So you can see how the daily chart, we also have this anchored VWAPs marked. And these bookmarks have been saved and they have been shared in the report also. So you can identify where we have made swing highs. You can see how we have got 5 swing highs in Nifty futures in the last 1 month. So all of them will have these anchored VWAPs. So as long as we are below these anchored VWAPs, we can expect the auction to continue probing lower. As and when these anchored VWAPs keep getting taken out, you know now that the theme is turning slightly bullish. So what did we do today? We opened above this. We took out this POC, and took out this VWAP, sorry, and we stalled right at this DTPO POC of 24813. That is where the highs of today was. And you can also see how we have the anchored VWAP from 31st of July, which was a swing high, the settlement day, also coming there. So here we will want to see some buying coming in order flow tomorrow. So this will give us confidence to go long and tag this unvisited VPOC, which is coinciding with the rollover point of 24860. So then we have these higher anchored VWAP preferences of 24924, which will be our upside targets, and this 24977, which is the anchored VWAP from 30th of June, where we hit the highs of 2025, would be the most important swing reference for the entire series. So if we are able to take these off, only then we can be bullish for the month of August. On the downside, we will have to see, we'll have to first break below this and then take it day on day. If we get a sell side uh, initiative tail, the VWAP of that day becomes a fresh reference. So that is how we will have to look at how the auction is forming day on day. On the upside, I've given you very important good references. 24860 and 24977 would be the two most important references. So as long as we are not able to take these two out, we cannot be very bullish for the month of August going forward. So let's now quickly have a look at the Bank Nifty futures chart, and then we will sign off. In any case, if you have any queries, please feel free to post them. I'll do my best to answer them all before we can wind them for the day. So I'm just opening up the market profile chart of the Bank Nifty futures, and because we are talking about the structure and the longer time frame and the top to bottom approach, today's session is only based on the market profile charts. So I'm not touching the order flow charts for now. So we will have them covered in a later session, which we do. And coming to the Bank Nifty profile chart, you can see how another very important cue the August futures in Bank Nifty had left on settlement day was it did not leave a failed auction at the lows. In fact, it gave us poor lows. So, whereas in spot as well as in July futures, the Bank Nifty had left a failed auction. But in the August futures, it made a similar low. The seaside never broke below the initial balance low. So this was asking to be repaired. And that is the reason when we got this failed seaside extension on Friday, all of us, even at the VLD, the V tender room, the live desk, we were looking for a test of these lows. And it did come in with a spike close. But after which we have formed a balance today. So we will have to see which of these tails of today holds. If we are going higher, if we negate this, we are looking at this POC of 56,000 and then this anchored VWAP and very important rollover point of 56170. So we just like in Nifty, we have anchored VWAPs, we have four swing highs in Bank Nifty futures also in the August series. So it is very clearly telling us that the sellers have been dominant of late. So if the buyers have to gain ground, they will have to slowly start taking off these anchored VWAPs. We will have to get above this, negate this on a closing basis, and then get on to the next anchored VWAP. So as long as these anchored VWAPs are showing up on your market profile chart, you know structure wise you're looking for more downside. If we are leaving buying tails on a daily basis like what we have done today, this is still not a confirmed one because we have an A period tail at the top also. Only if we take this out, this becomes the initiative buying tail. If this is taken out tomorrow, then if tomorrow if we leave another A period buying tail, you know now that the buyers are getting in more control. So that is how we will need to take, and all these charts and these references are updated in our forum section, and we have it up so that you can make use of these. So this is the forum, and under the forum we will have whichever post is updated latest, it'll show up here. This weekly spot will remain constant for the next 4 days because we will update the levels in this post itself. But we send out a post on X saying that hypos for the next day are being written. Whereas the daily report will update every day, and you will have a market profile analysis for Nifty futures and Bank Nifty futures for today, which is the 4th of August, and business areas for tomorrow. So this will be there before the market opens, so that you can study them, you can make use of them, and as we get into tomorrow's session, we can look at what the order flow is showing us and take some good tradable setups. So thank you guys for joining in. That is it from my side for today. Do feel free to post your queries to us. You can send me a DM on X. At Uttam Goyal is my ID. You can also mail us at support@vtrender.com. Make sure you read these forum section and the must read column. We have developed a very new feature, the density chart. Over the weekend, you must have seen that on X, and we are having a webinar on the same on Thursday mostly. So be tuned and be ready for that. It's a very interesting topic, and will definitely add some more arsenal to the ammunition we are having. So yes, point is noted. We will try to post the reports before 8:30 every day. The spot report is posted in the night itself, but the futures report we'll try to post that one also very early in the morning or maybe late in the night. So thank you guys for joining in, and I'm signing off for now. Have a great evening, and let's look forward to some wonderful trade setups in the month of August.